Recently had a subscriber reach out and ask if I could do a rebuild video on a Mikuni style carburetor. Your smaller engines, your Chinese manufactured engines are most likely going to have a Mikuni style. This is a Kian style. So your throttle cable goes in here and it rotates this up and down. So it will actually actuate this way, like so, like that. And that's what your throttle is basically. It just opens up, allows more air. When it pulls air through, it creates the Venturi effect, aka it creates a vacuum. Once it creates the vacuum, then it starts pulling in the aerated fuel and air mixture, and then it can allow for combustion. Primary thing that happens whenever you let a carb sit up for a long period of time, it's just been neglected, various amounts of things, just old, bad air filters, so on and so forth. Get junk inside of these carburetors and it will clog them up. 90% of the time, it's because people leave fuel in the bowl. That's why whenever I get done riding any of my carbureted vehicles, I will turn the fuel off from the tank and I will run it until it runs out of gas, pretty much ensuring that there is a limited amount of fuel in the bowl. The bowl is going to be the larger portion down here at the bottom. That is where your fuel is stored. How I would go about rebuilding one of these style carburetors, you would remove the throttle cable assembly, which is just the cable, the cap, the spring, and then the actual slide and the fuel mixture pin. It controls your intake. The same way that other carb slid up and down, this slides up and down and allows that carbureted air fuel mixture to enter your engine. One thing that you really need to know is whenever you see a screw that has that dot on there, just like that, that is going to be a JPY rated screwdriver. Do not sleep on these. This is going to, one, it's got the nice knurling here. They're like $3 on Amazon, just buy one. It's going to prevent you from stripping them out because this is a very specific style screw and it is Phillips, so it's very easy to strip out. Now 90% of your rebuild kits are going to come with new screws, so I mean, you don't need it. It just makes your life a little bit easier. So the first thing you're going to do is remove the 4-3 screws at the bottom, and once you do that, you're going to reveal the bowl and float and needle mechanisms on the interior. Your rebuild kit should come with all of the gasketing and everything that you need. This is going to be your air fuel mixture screw. I recommend replacing this with an aftermarket if possible. That way you don't need a flathead. Then you're gonna have your pilot and then your leak jet. These are gonna be the jets that get clogged, these two right here. So you will need a small, very small style flathead, a Phillips, a flathead that will fit into these. You could use a pair of pliers. I'm not telling you not to, but I'm not telling you to. You're gonna need some jets of some sort. They have these kits on Amazon for like $10. Some sort of brush, primarily for the gunk that's going to build up in and around the bowl itself and any other components. These are pretty simplistic carburetors, so they're really not that difficult. You'll probably need a pipe cleaner to do some of the cleaning on this, but you just want to make sure that it looks surgical. You don't want any buildup. You don't want any gunk, any tar, any gloop, or any of that stuff building up on the interior of this carburetor. Just going through and scrubbing everything down. If you have an ultrasonic cleaner, even better. These are made out of brass, so they're very soft. Because if that pair of pliers slips, shred the brass and it's going to get down in here and potentially cause a clog in the future. Release that. Throw it on the ground because you don't need it anymore. Realistically, you can keep it and clean it. A lot of people just replace them because they're easy to replace. You're already in here. This is primarily where you're going to get your clogs in, is through these little jets. A great thing to do is to take a brass wire brush or any kind of a throttle cable or something like that. You can pull one of those little bristles off of the braided throttle cable or off of this, and then you can use that to stick into these tiny little orifices, and then that way you get a good clean on it. You will also need to dig into this. I like to pull these out, just clean it and inspect it. Inspect this. This is where the pipe cleaner is going to come in handy. You'll just run the pipe cleaner down through there, then spray you some carb cleaner in there. Make sure it's all nice and cleaned out. That's the bulk of it. I mean, you're not doing rocket surgery here. The jetting that you have in your carb, I recommend you check it. It'll have little numbers on the side. For example, this one's main jet is 100, or maybe that's the leak jet. I always forget. You're just going to want to go through, clean all of these, remove the seat and take the pin here, push this pin through. As you can see, that pin's coming through this one side. Remove this pin. This is your float, and then this is going to be your needle. Now, a lot of times, especially if you're having an over revving issue or you're running low on fuel, it's going to be from this little sucker here. This can get caught up very easily in here, and this is what allows the fuel to run in through. If you can see, this is your intake, your fuel intake, and it runs down through here straight down to this little needle, because that's your fuel supply. This is going to be where you're getting all of your supply for fuel. So what happens is when this bowl, because the carb is up like this, right? So when this bowl floats up like that and it fills the carburetor, when it fills the carburetor, you will effectively, it pushes that needle into this, and it's got a rubber stopper here at the end, and it shuts that fuel off. So you don't have it just leaking out. If you have fuel leaking out of the carburetor, it's going to be because of the bowl and the needle sticking. So it'll stick like this down even though the bowl is full, and then it'll flow through all of the orifices that are open. You just want to go through and take a look at it and then clean it. I hit everything with a little bit of carb cleaner, maybe some PB Blaster to get some nice lubricity in there. 99% of applications, these are going to be plastic, so they'll get punctures in them and then they'll fill up and then they'll stay low like that. So it won't float anymore, so it'll just be dumping fuel into your carb. If you're having an issue with over-fueling, it's going to be from the needle getting stuck, or the float has a puncture in it and it's causing it to remain open. Pay attention to the way this comes out, because it's pretty intuitive, but I mean, you could always fumble it up and put it in there incorrectly. Just pay attention. I highly recommend to record, do the same way that I'm doing. Just have a phone overhead, or take pictures as you're going through. Before you take something all the way out, just take a picture of it really quickly, and that way you know the way that it's supposed to go back in, the way that it's put together prior to you getting in there fumbling with it. I highly recommend not to do a carb clean on a surface that has these fibers, because anything like that is going to dig in, and it's going to make a lot of problems for you. I personally, my first time ever rebuilding a carburetor, I used the lid to a Lowe's tote, or like a moving tote. I just put it down, tore the whole thing apart, and it had little grooves in it like this, so your parts wouldn't fly away. So you just rebuild the carb on something like this, and you take the parts out and put them exactly in the order that they came out, and it's pretty simple. You're going to have like a choke or a butterfly valve, throw some carb cleaner on it, get your brush in there. You're cleaning house, making sure everything is well lubricated and it is operating smoothly. Whenever you're jetting a carburetor, you're going to take into account any kind of upgrades that you've done. A higher compression piston, a higher flow carburetor, better flow exhaust, a better flow air filter. Anything that causes a differential in fuel delivery or air expulsion, you're going to want to put that into perspective. And I personally like to use forums. So China Riders, Google just China Riders forum, especially for the Mikuni style carburetors. They're going to have a lot. If you have a Chinese clone, such as a Hawk, TaoTao Kayo K2, for example, the one that I have, they're going to have a lot of information on there where you can source parts and things like that. Any AI, you just have a conversation with them. So what I'll do is I'll say, I have this exhaust, this type of carburetor, this is my engine, and this is the application and the elevation. You want to have an elevation calculation in there as well, and the temperature also matters, because the hotter it is, the less dense the air is. I know it's getting a little bit overcomplicated, but you just make sure that you have all of the potential variables accounted for. And if you really don't want to mess with it too much, I'd say just go with a little bit slightly larger main jet than what your stock is. If it's a 130, just go up to like a 132 or a 133, and it'll give you a little bit more fuel delivery. And you can kind of, if it is too much fuel, you can typically adjust that out with the air fuel screw. It gives you some adjustability on the fly. How you go about adjusting that even more on the Mikuni style, it just slides down here into the throttle slide. The slide is a little bit tricky. It can kind of get you, especially if you put it all back together and then you go to start your engine and it just goes, what? Yeah, that's going to be because you have the slide backwards. You'll notice inside here, you can see clean through it, right? That gets stuck right there. But if you flip it 180 degrees, it goes all the way down. So if you can't see that, if that doesn't go all the way down, you're wrong. So it's going to be that you have this backwards, and it won't go past wide open throttle. So as soon as you start that engine, it's going to try to take off on you. Just make sure you have your slide all the way down. Your fuel mixture pin, if I'm not mistaken, the higher that this pin goes up the clip, So the further down the clip is, the more rich your fuel mixture is. And then the higher up the pin is, the more lean your fuel mixture is. And the reason that is because this pin goes all the way through down to your jet. And when you slide your throttle up, it allows air to come in through here. And then this pin regulates the amount of fuel because it's tapered. So the fact that it's tapered allows it to move up, and then that's going to allow more fuel in. If it moves down, that's going to allow less fuel in. So it's effectively lean, rich, lean, rich. So where you move that clip, if you're moving it up, it moves the needle further down. It's going to be more lean. If you're moving it down, it's moving the needle up, and it's going to be more rich. So I like to start, especially if you don't know a lot of information about the engine itself, I like to start somewhere in the middle. So this one has 5 settings. I put mine at the 3rd. It's right in the middle. It gives you kind of somewhere to play with. And it's really easy to change on these Mikuni style carburetors for the simplistic reason that this just goes down in there like so. And then you have your cap, your spring. Make sure your cap is on the throttle cable. The spring is on the throttle cable. And then you'll push your throttle cable through the side here, down to the bottom, through this little window, and then up. And now your cap is ready to be installed on the top portion of the carburetor. And again, we're going to pay attention to the slide and make sure it goes down. So there, it doesn't go down. I'll show you this over here as well. It doesn't go down. So we are looking for this. It goes all the way down. And be careful with your throttle cable. If this gets kinked, it can cause a weird issue where you would pull the throttle and it would go and it sounds kind of like it's maybe an overfuel or an underfuel, or it's too lean or too rich. Realistically, what is happening is the throttle cable's just getting stuck. So now that you've got your throttle cable back together, make sure it's not pinched at all. Cleaned all of the bottom of your float bowl pin. Jets have been changed and upgraded or downgraded based on if you have a lean mixture or a rich mixture. And if you want to see a video about how you tell if it's lean or rich, shoot a comment. I'll make you one. Everything is nice and beautiful down here. When you get a new set of gaskets, you're going to find that they are not exactly pliable, and they'll sit all kind of wonky on your thing and like kind of out of place. Well, if you were to install this gasket, place that bowl onto the carburetor itself like this with it off to the side, it's going to crush that gasket and you're going to leak everywhere. A little bit of silicone grease or assembly lube will work, and then you just take a couple of dollops of this stuff. This is actually good for your gaskets as well. It keeps them nice and lubricated, and you don't need a whole bunch of this stuff. Don't go crazy with it. You'll just place that down in there, and then you will find that it's kind of tacky, so it keeps your gasket in there. You don't have to worry about that sucker going nowhere, partner. And put this all back together, and now theoretically you have just rebuilt a Mikuni style carburetor. Quiz, pop quiz. What type of screwdriver is this? JPY. Get a Japanese standard screwdriver. Don't use just any random Phillips. You can. I advise against it because you're going to strip those screws. Nobody's going to be looking at the bottom of your carburetor, but you will be next time. Let's say you got to take it apart, put the jets back. You strip it again. Let's say change the jets again. You put a new filter on it or a new exhaust on it. You got to change them again, so on and so forth, or it gets clogged again. And you just keep replacing the jets. Well, eventually these screws are going to strip out on you and you're causing yourself a lot more issues. And you've got yourself an effectively rebuilt carburetor. It's really simple. I mean, you're just taking this thing apart. You're paying attention to the way the things come apart. If you've never taken one apart before, don't worry. This is probably one of the most simplistic pieces of intricate maintenance that you can do on a carbureted engine. 3 things that you need to pay attention to, and that's where your pin is on your fuel delivery pin from your intake, then your main jet and your pilot jet. Your jets in general, where your air fuel mixture screw is. Typically, most people will tell you that you take it all the way in, and then you go, in this example, we're looking at about 11 o'clock is where we're starting. We want to back it out. That's 1 turn. And then they usually say about 1.5. I typically like to go 2. So you just take it out 2 turns. That gives you enough to know that there's a baseline and you know where it's at. If it's all the way in, you're going to have some idling issues. So that usually gives you a pretty good baseline, anywhere between 1.5 to 2 turns out, and then adjust it from there. And that's why it's good to have one of the aftermarket style air fuel mixture screws, because then you can just get under there with your fingers while you're riding. Let's say you hit a higher elevation, you're climbing up a mountain and you need less fuel. You can just run this sucker in and then it gives you a little bit less fuel. It's really easy, really simplistic. At the end of the day, dude, these Mikuni style carburetors don't have as many complicated components as as the key-in style. These are the Mikuni style carburetors are super easy, man. They're cheap. They have decent performance. If you get one of these Chinese bikes, take a PZ30 Nibby carburetor or a PZ28. I think it might come with a 26 or 28. I can't remember. But the PZ30, you can grow into it. So you can put on a better, higher flowing exhaust, or a better, higher flowing air filter, or a better cam, piston, etc., etc., and you can grow into it. They're like $60, $50 online. Sometimes you can find them on like Facebook Marketplace for secondhand for like $30. And they really open these things up. They add a lot of extra horsepower to them for fairly cheap, if you're asking me. So anytime you can add horsepower for less than $100, why wouldn't we? That's the grand scheme of things. It's pretty easy to do. You need a good flathead, a JPY Phillips, a Japanese standard Phillips, a brush, some carb cleaner, and a little bit of time. Like, I did this whole video, and I think that from tearing it off of the go-kart build to now, I think it's been like 30 minutes, man. You can buy rebuild kits for like $10, $15. But like I said, you can also buy the carburetor for like 30, 40 bucks, 50 bucks online, maybe 60 at Amazon. But stay tuned. If you got anything from this video, like, subscribe, comment, hit me up if you want a house, something like that.